Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hardware News Recap of the Week. We filmed the vast majority of this episode a couple days ago, but Linus Media Group, well specifically Linus himself, has posted a response to our video. And it's not well thought out. It's pretty disappointing, honestly. So we're going to insert a section and talk about that. Then we'll get into all the other news topics for the week. Before that, this video is brought to you by Arctic and the Liquid Freezer 2 liquid coolers, now including an ARGB model in the lineup. The Liquid Freezer series has been a top performer in our benchmark for years now, and Arctic has continually fine-tuned its products even post-launch with things like kits for Ryzen, ARGB fans for new flare, and new radiator sizes. The company also has its brand new MX6 thermal paste on the market now. Learn more at the links in the description below. So we posted some coverage yesterday with some concerns about data accuracy, ethics, and responsibilities of Linus Media Group. Not going to recap all of that here. You should check that video out before proceeding its necessary context. Linus hastily posted a statement about 3.5 hours after our video went live. The video raised concerns again about an incredibly large amount of testing inaccuracy issues, alongside what we believe to be unethical actions and just issues with responsibility as a large outlet in general. Linus's statement, it is an unhinged, unapologetic rant where he shirks responsibility and blames others. He tries to play weird semantic games like saying, quote, "We didn't sell the product, we auctioned it," or misrepresent the timeline for when he contacted Billet Labs. He triples down on Billet Labs and says, quote, "I still disagree that the Billet Labs video is an accuracy issue. It's more like, I just read the room wrong." That doesn't even make any sense. It's not the job of a reviewer to read the room and tell the room what it wants to hear. That is called a
sycophant.
A sycophant is a perfect word to describe it.
He also said, quote, "We could have retested it with perfect accuracy, but to do so properly, accounting for which cases it could be installed in, none, and which radiators it would be plumbed with, again, a mystery, would have been impossible. And also didn't affect the conclusion of the video, or so I thought." To be clear here, the random caps lock is not us. That's the original emphasis. I mean, we could have retested it with perfect accuracy, but to do so would have been impossible is nonsense. And it's very difficult to engage with nonsense. I don't know what that means. Then he completely ignores the enormous video-breaking errors with cooler CPU and GPU testing results and processes that sometimes wildly misrepresent the product stack. Other than the usual platitudes of "we wear our imperfection on our sleeves in the interest of ensuring that we stay accountable to you," without explaining how it happened or how they'll fix it. Look, we're going to talk about this today, but we're not going to drag this out and make a whole new standalone video about this response, because they haven't added anything of substance. The response is immature, it's blaming others, and it's irresponsible to the community they've built. But we are going to talk about some of the issues in this statement nonetheless, and then we're moving on. Let's start with Billet. This is where the story is getting a little bit twisted. We saw some comments about this confirming our concerns that people would lose track of the actual timeline. First of all, we're not going to argue the semantics about an item being sold against the will of a company versus being auctioned, and being for charity, which we already said doesn't make that better. It makes it worse, because now you're roping in an innocent third party into a very awkward situation that can potentially make them look bad by proxy. And secondly, this is actually what we said. The first time they agreed to send it back was June 30th. At LTX, Linus Media Group put the one-of-a-kind water block up for auction at its Extra Life auction event. More seriously, Linus's statement, which reads, quote, "We have already agreed to compensate Billet Labs for the cost of their prototype," uses specific language to imply that this was agreed upon prior to our video launching. Following this forum post from Linus, we reached out to Billet Labs, with whom we'd already had contact, and we asked them the following. We said Linus's comment doesn't expressly say it, but it seems to imply that this agreement was made previously. Billet Labs said, "No, absolutely not. No, no, no." The only mention of any money to do with the prototype was our response to them after they said they'd auctioned it. And we basically said, you know, that was an expensive prototype. They didn't want us to share the exact dollar amount. Billet continued to explain their email. They said, quote, "I said, do you plan to reimburse us for this? And we heard nothing. We didn't get a response until your video," and Billet thanked us for it. We asked Billet when it had received that email from Linus, and they noted it arrived about 2 to 3 hours after we published our video, which would have been around the same time that Linus posted the comment on the forums. So he wrote that email and he posted and then said they've already come to an agreement. But at the time he posted it, Billet hadn't responded to the email. And just for the record, we have the timeline of events, so I vetted them. And Linus Media Group did, in fact, agree to send the block back on June 30th, and they agreed again later, and then they followed up to tell Billet that they would have a tracking number soon, and then it was last seen at the auction at LTX. So today was the first time that Billet had direct contact with Linus. A comment from Linus lower in the forum reads this, quote, "Billet sent us a quote. I don't know or care how they arrived at the value. If they're good, I'm good." We asked them about this, and Billet emphasized to us that it had not sent Linus Media Group a quote. It noted that it had expressed a possible value of the block in frustration before our video went up, before this conversation began, after they learned that it had been auctioned previously, but that this wasn't any kind of quote or invoice. We asked Billet if it had anything further to share, and it said, "He's emailed us. We haven't emailed back yet at the time of writing. We thank the community for the support. We stand by everything we've said publicly." Billet noted that they intend to email Linus back prior to sharing any further details, and they also spent a few minutes to express very sincere gratitude to the community. And as they don't have quite as much of a platform, I'm just conveying that to you. They were extremely grateful to the support that they've received from you all. And I do think that they felt some closure on their side. Now we get into something important. As far as Linus's belief that we should have reached out to him first, and that not doing so somehow makes the 44 minutes of reporting any less valid, and considering the fact that he said there would have been valuable context such as, quote, "the fact that while we haven't sent payment yet, we've already agreed to compensate Billet Labs with the cost of their prototype," which, again, Linus emailed Billet after the video. And this Billet situation is exactly why. This sentence structure makes it appear as if Billet already agreed to some kind of resolution before the video. That's why it's our responsibility when doing proper reporting to ensure that the truth gets to viewers and that it's not misrepresented by a manufacturer. We don't have to reach out to corporations when we think there's a patterned behavior or that there may be a significant chance that they try to cover things up or prepare a pre-written response that could twist the narrative, and in this case, manipulate the audience. Linus willfully ignoring our valid criticisms of data accuracy and some of the ethical concerns, while then trying to manipulate the audience into viewing him as the victim, not just LMG. This was very, it was bizarre. This is why we don't reach out every time. I want to be very clear. We don't have to reach out to corporations prior to reporting on them, period. For big corporations, we don't reach out if the issue already harms consumers or if their view is irrelevant. The Walmart PC, the Alienware PC, any number of products we buy, but we don't need to reach out because the damage is being done actively. And we don't need Linus's input or permission to make that video. LMG's videos are already affecting millions of consumers, and they have objective errors that we covered objectively, and they involved serious ethical concerns, which we raised. And rather than addressing those, he's choosing to try and distract viewers by whining about us not allowing him to comment first. And they've already commented anyway. They did it in all of these various WAN shows. We know what their comment is. We know what they think. And when there's an objective, factual issue, we don't need to reach out. The risk is to the consumer. And these aren't unreleased products. They are public videos with a lot of views. And I am exceptionally disappointed in this response. I am baffled that this was the path chosen. I don't know. I don't know how to respond to this circular deflecting nonsense. As for the rest of the sort of meandering diatribe, it's just bizarre. I really am. I am genuinely just disappointed by this. Here's one such quote. "I'm sorry I got the community's priorities mixed up on this one and that we didn't show the billet in the best light. Our intention wasn't to hurt anyone. We wanted no one to buy it because it's an egregious waste of money, no matter what temps it runs at." Another quote, "Will the 'it was a mistake, a bad one, but a mistake, and they're taking care of it' reality manage to have the same reach?" This is a very bitter way to admit a mistake, but my answer to that question, because it had a question mark at the end of it, is not if you are insincere and indignant about it. No. He then talks about being real people and said, quote, "Today sucks." Look, guys, I'm not going to mince words to protect my reputation amongst sort of the devout LTT supporters, and that's gaslighting. That's what it is. Like this, we're the victims. Feel bad for us. That's what that is. So it's not acceptable behavior. It is embarrassing. And here's one more. Adam and I were talking about this today. He advocated for retesting it, regardless of how non-viable it was as a product at the time. And I think he expressed really well today why it mattered. It was like making a video about a supercar. It doesn't matter if no one watching will buy it. They just want to see it rip. I missed that, but it wasn't because I didn't care about the consumer. It was because I was so focused on how this product impacted a potential buyer. Bullshit. We know why they didn't do it.
I don't know, guys. I'm not sure if I can apologize for not spending another $100, $200, $300, $500 of various people's time.
So I'll wrap this up by saying, look, we had data points in there that were completely ignored. They weren't mentioned at all in any of this. We talked about serious testing issues. We talked about methodological issues. We talked about lack of process. We talked about lack of QC. We talked about the fact that people can look at numbers that are 300% off in some cases, or in the cases of coolers, are just literally incorrect because it was backwards or installed improperly, and how they can get past people. None of that was addressed. This was a layup to say, here's our 10-point plan. Yeah, we fucked up. Here's what we're going to do to fix it. There's an odd note in the statement about using their notes against them, like as if we're weaponizing their transparency or something. And I want to be clear again. Like the vast majority of the significant errors I found. They're not pinned under their videos. I found them. I went and I looked at the numbers and I compared their own numbers against their own numbers. And I found those errors, right? Like it's misrepresenting reality here and it is choosing to ignore it. So here's the deal. If LTT releases a new PR-inspired comment after this or goes on another rant, we probably won't be responding. This was LMG's chance to take responsibility. And he's shown LMG's true colors and what he as the owner really thinks. And we're greatly disappointed at the tripling down rather than proposing future-looking solutions. And at this point, we wouldn't believe them if they released a new statement to try and undo this one, because it's clear to us what the company's owners thought of these issues. And I can't get over this quote. We didn't sell it, we auctioned it. Seriously? Like that is what we're gonna open with? Got us. Whatever. We're gonna go back to the rest of hardware news. I'm gonna drop this in. That's your update. Up next, some pretty big news we've been talking about. Of course, TSMC has been expanding like crazy. It's based in Taiwan, hence Taiwan Semiconductor, but it's also opening up new fabs in the West, like in the US. Actually, I think there's one near Intel's Arizona fab. Intel is another major manufacturer, Samsung, of course, but fabrication plants still relatively rare compared to the demand that there is. And TSMC now has a new joint venture with Bosch, Infineon, and NXP, where it will be opening up what the group collectively is calling the European Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or ESMC. ESMC plans to build a manufacturing plant for silicon in Dresden, Germany, and this is set up for 300 millimeter wafer production. At 300 millimeter here, the size of the wafer, not the process node. That would be gigantic. So that would incredibly large would be the technical name for that. It's not a totally done deal, as the companies are waiting on confirmation of the level of public funding for the project under the European Chips Act. The US recently had its own Chips Act. So the world is ramping in its fabrication plants. The current plan would have construction start in 2024 and finish by the end of 2027, which is relatively fast for a fab. As for the ownership structure, TSMC would own 70% of this facility. It would also be the operator, given its experience in operating fabs, and the other companies would each hold 10%. This is actually pretty big news. It's getting exciting in the silicon world right now because it's interesting, because things started with a lot of smaller, far less sophisticated fabrication facilities decades ago. And as time has gone on, really it's just sort of been a couple of fabs that at any one point in time are making the most advanced silicon. So TSMC has been a front runner for a while now. Intel has been in and out, depending on the period of time right now they're in. And Global Foundries likewise has been sort of in and out of the popularity contest for the highest end or most advanced silicon that goes in something like a device we would review. So it's really not a big group. You're talking 2 to 3, sometimes 4, depending on how you count Samsung that given period of time. Plants or companies, operating plants rather, each with a few plants of their own, that are in the running for high-end silicon. And now Intel is expanding in the US. It's building multiple fabs in Arizona. They are all interconnected into sort of a mega fab, they call it. And then Taiwan Semiconductor has been expanding. And of course, we've got this ESMC for the first big news in Europe for a major silicon fabrication plant. Now, to be clear, there are existing fabs in Europe, so Global Foundries is probably the most noteworthy, which was the supplier for AMD silicon for a long time. I think they might actually make some of it still, but not the most modern stuff. Anyway, if this is built, the resulting fab would have a production capacity of 40,000 wafers on TSMC's 28 nanometer or 22 nanometer CMOS and 16 nanometer or 12 nanometer FinFET nodes. While these are not the bleeding edge processors that CPUs and GPUs are made on today, there are basically uncountable other applications that don't need the most expensive processors, especially automotive and industrial. Just as an example, we sort of doubt Bosch's dishwashers need 7 nanometer process for their controllers, and Bosch is one of the investors, I suppose, here. So Bosch's Dr. Stefan Hartung, whom we assume isn't related to Roman Hartung because there's no thermal paste on his shirt. He said, quote, "Semiconductors are not only a crucial success factor for Bosch. Their reliable availability is also of great importance for the success of the global automotive industry. Apart from continuously expanding our own manufacturing facilities, we further secure our supply chains as an automotive supplier through close cooperation with our partners. With TSMC, we're pleased to gain a global innovation leader to strengthen the semiconductor ecosystem in the direct vicinity of our semiconductor plant in Dresden." Now, this move continues the global interest of large governments to expand local to them manufacturing facilities for semiconductor technology and semiconductors themselves. We've seen this in a few locations now, especially in the US the last couple of years. There are geopolitical motivations that we won't get into that encourage this type of move, but regardless of those, it's probably a good thing to have a diversified set of suppliers and locations where they operate. Up next, Valve is now selling certified refurbished Steam Decks. The base 64 gigabyte version is $320. It's out of stock at the time of writing. $420 for the 256 gigabyte version, and $520 for the 512 gigabyte model. Now, if we put those side by side with full retail, that's $80 off for the cheapest, $110 for the middle model, and $130 off for the max model. Valve says that each deck goes through a full factory reset, examination and testing, and thorough cleaning. Valve also said that they may have, quote, minor cosmetic blemishes, which the company defines as small blemishes or scratches on the plastic casing, not the screen, they say, generally caused by normal handling of the unit. This is actually great because reusing technology that otherwise is destined for a landfill to sell it again to someone else at cheaper is exactly what we should be doing whenever it's possible. In this instance, too, it's very clear that they are refurbished. The only time we've ever really had issues with refurbished things here is buying through, say, Newegg, which we talked about in the past, where there were times where they toggled between having it be very explicit, it's super obvious it was refurbished, and then minimizing sort of that information. So here it's very obvious, which is really the only way to do this. The refurbished units come with a 1-year warranty even still, and they will also include a refurbished power adapter and a carrying case. No information on whether the carrying case too is refurbished. In the case of a warranty claim on these refurbished units, the replacement will also come from refurbished stock. So they've closed the loophole. You shouldn't buy a refurbished one, make a claim, and then expect to get a new one. It won't work that way. These are likely to be in high demand based on what we've seen already, so it'll take some patience to get that cheapest $320 option. It's actually a very good deal. Availability will come and go, though, since they originate from customer returns. Valve also makes a point to clarify that these are not the same as refurbished decks that GameStop is selling. Those are handled entirely by GameStop and have a totally different warranty and ecosystem for repairs as we understand it. Given Valve's current positioning as basically the monarch of PC gaming, this is relatively benevolent for the company that controls the distribution of video games. And this follows the partnership with iFixit previously to sell replacement parts if you wanted to repair your own. Up next, a modder boasts Steam Deck modifications that bring the deck's RAM to 32 gigabytes. This is another deck story. It's from modder Bolaj Trizka, who successfully upgraded the deck and its memory. The mod requires skill with a BGA rework station to remove the original memory modules and replace them with higher capacity ones. This first photo shows the main board with the AMD APU and memory modules after the rework, still covered in flux. The next picture has the device booted, detecting the full 30.2 gigabytes of RAM. That is intentional pronunciation. If you're not aware, that's the same thing as 32 gigabytes. It's just counted in binary bits. We've got an old video with Patrick Stone if you want to check that out. Based on our understanding of the mod, performing this won't give the graphics part of the APU more memory to work with right away, and would require use of third-party tools to change hidden settings in the BIOS. This isn't the first deck mod that Trizka has worked on either. Earlier posts showed a higher resolution 1920 by 1200 screen installed and working. JSOX has a deck screen upgrade coming as well, but it's just an anti-glare upgrade and not a higher resolution. We've talked about some other cool deck mods that you can do in the past, like transparent case upgrades, swapping components of the chassis. This is a lot more depth than that, but it's proven to be a fairly modular and upgradable device, or at least modifiable device, although in this case upgradable works too. It's a big change. Up next, some big news in the AMD leaks department. There's screenshots of what appears to be an alleged AMD APU, a next-gen one, showing a very interesting hybrid core layout. You may find it familiar because this has a P-core and E-core arrangement, so it's moving to a heterogeneous design similar to what we see with Intel. In this one, the screenshot indicates 4 P-cores and 8 E-cores. If the screenshots are real here, this would be a 45-watt mobile part with a total of 12 cores and 24 threads. That would mean AMD's version of E-cores still have SMT, unlike Intel's. The screenshot shows that it's called Strix something, which could be the Strix point that AMD announced, already named as the Zen 5 successor to Phoenix Point. Although censoring an already announced architecture name strikes us as an odd choice, so it's possible it could be something else. AMD's original slide showing Strix point didn't mention a hybrid design, not that it has to, and the overall core roadmap shows Zen 5C coming after Zen 5 with Vcache, so this is far from cut and dry, even by leak standards. Intel's 12th and 13th gen CPUs have shown that heterogeneous approaches have real benefit for heavily threaded applications, so AMD following this path wouldn't be surprising. Generally speaking, you want highly parallel tasks to run as efficiently as possible, and just adding more big power-hungry cores forever isn't the best approach. It might not always even be possible. Up next, AMD has announced a new limited Starfield edition of its RX 7900 XTX video cards and of its Ryzen 7800X 3D CPUs. This is in collaboration with Bethesda. The CPU has a special box, and the GPU was color customized. So the video card features a custom paint job in Bethesda's self-proclaimed NASA punk style of mostly white and multiple primary colors as accents. Notably, the red striped cooling fins of the 7900 XTX are now joined by orange, yellow, and blue fins. Kind of a mix of Gundam, Starfield, and BMW. There are several other custom details on the backplate and the shroud, and we think the overall effect looks good. It's a shame though, because AMD is only making 500 of each, so these are presumably going to be difficult to get. Origin PC and Blue Horse Studios created this wild case mod for QuakeCon. Probably make Gundam fans happy as well. And the build itself actually looks really nice. If you're interested in playing Starfield once the modders are done fixing it, AMD has codes available for several of its products right now, but the number one thing we're concerned about is if there's going to be any active blocking of NVIDIA technologies given the previous stance, or if it's just NVIDIA can add to it, but it won't be till after some period of exclusivity. We'll see. AMD got enough negative backlash over that from the community, especially from its own subreddit, that maybe things will change by launch. But either way, that's something we're going to be keeping an eye on. And we do plan to work on Starfield at launch for some testing, maybe integration into our full bench suite. The leaks keep coming this week, this time with Bench Leaks on Twitter picking up a Geekbench 6 result for an Intel i5 14600KF. Harukazi5719 made a chart comparing this result to several other CPUs, it has the multi-core score at 17% faster than the 13600K and about 6% faster than single core. Obviously, these numbers can't be taken at face value for lots of reasons. One of them is this is Geekbench, but they point to a marked increase in performance on E-cores, which we'll be testing once they come out. That or the rumors of the 14600K having the same core counts as the 13600K are wrong. It's one or the other. As another harbinger of the final Core i generation CPUs, the 14700K has surfaced in a photo posted by WXNod on Twitter. It's shown in the BIOS screen of an MSI Z690 DDR4 board. There are a few interesting details here, like the 6.3 gigahertz core clock, and no, this definitely isn't stock before anyone runs away with that, and the RAM set to DDR4 4600 in Gear 1 mode. Now, based on the 13th gen, getting those settings to post is impressive, especially the IMC frequency. However, it's entirely possible the setup is only barely stable enough to get into BIOS for a picture. And again, just to emphasize, this is not going to be a 6.3 gigahertz CPU. That's probably it's an overclock or a fake screenshot. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly or patreon.com/gamersnexus. We'll see you all next time.